Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Rolka. I want to welcome you to this week's live event. This is your live event, so it can take whatever turn you would like it to. I'm here to answer questions and help out in any way that I can. Before we get started, if you are a subscriber, I thank you very much. If you haven't yet chosen to do so, I hope that you'll consider doing so now. As far as I am aware, the chat is open. So please type in your questions and I will take them just as soon as I possibly can in order on screen. I do skip around a little bit from time to time if I think the typing sometimes cuts you off, so I'll skip ahead, but I'll always go back. I had a few questions that were written in this week. So I'm going to take those first. As I'm doing so, Anika, hello. Aldo, hello and welcome back. It's always nice to see you pop up. Capone, hello. Good to see you as well. And I'm going to answer your question first. And Maz, hello. Hello. So diving right in, Capone, in answer to your question, which you left a message, you sent it via message, which was, I think it was John Fartham, I think was the person's name. And I listened to that song that you directed me to. And, that is actually a really good example. I think last week we were talking about using your voice in different ways, sometimes using head voice, sometimes belting if it's just in that right area of your voice, and other times even blending like a little bit of the ligament, which would like be a falsetto kind of vocal delivery, in with your cricothyroid dominant singing voice, and that gives you that lighter, airier thing, which you can hear him doing, I would say, to great effect in the verses of that song. In the chorus, it's a much more matched tone cricothyroid delivery going all the way up to high C with great fluidity, I might add. Though, one caveat, whenever there's a microphone involved, all bets are off. So, there's just so much manipulation that you can do, even just in terms of compression and how compression can impact the way that we hear and perceive a voice that has been recorded. Like the mics that I use when I'm doing my videos or when I'm doing this live event, I'm running a really, really basic setup here. I mean, yes, this is a very nice microphone, but I don't have any kind of stuff running in between what you're hearing come out of my mouth and what you are getting through to wherever you may be listening. But when you record something, there's equalization and compression, and usually multi-layers of compression to get that so that you get the same kind of volume response throughout all the different ranges of the voice. And then it's up to your mixing engineer to level things off so that you get appropriate crescendos and diminuendos, but that it all stays above the music bed or all those pre-recorded instruments. A few more hellos up there. Hello, Amos. Michael, hi, Jeff. That's Japadogi. I changed my nick just to make you feel easier. Thank you. It's funny. I was going to ask you if I could I never want to be presumptuous about these sorts of things. So I was going to ask you if I could just call you by your name, but now that it's on screen that way, we are all good in the hood. I do have a few other questions that were written in. One, I thought, there was a 3-parter that came in, and there was some really, really cool stuff in here, which I think could apply to all of us. And they write, I was surprised when listening back to a recording of my singing recently that a couple of my notes sounded flat, but when I was singing them at the time, they sounded fine. Why is that? Is the playback, and this was an MP3, distorted, or is it me? How can I tell if I'm sounding flat to others when I don't hear that live? I know this can happen if the music is too fast and loud and there's not enough proper breath support, engagement, and soft palate lift, but at the time, it does not sound flat at all. So there's a couple things here. I'm not one to blame the recording. Usually recorders don't lie. However, it does bear considering how it was recorded. So, was this a board recording? In other words, was it from the microphone? Like, did everything go to the soundboard, and then they took a cable and went from the soundboard into the recorder, or was it the recorder just sitting there with microphones out in the room? You'll get different results. You get different results based upon your microphone selections. And usually, the thing to do is to listen to a recording that you are very familiar with, record that the way that it was, the way that you were recorded, and then listen back to it and see if it sounds the same. So, like, take, well, we always used in the studio where you can buy these Grammy compilations year by year. So you can buy, like, all the hit songs from the Grammys 2016, 2015, 2014, going on back. And we would reference songs off that through the studio monitors in order to get an idea of what the monitors sounded like, so that when we were mixing projects, we would match the overall sonic quality of the song in particular, depending on the genre. So, listen back to the MP3 recorder and see, like, what does this thing sound like when it's just a regular recorded track? Now, if we sound a little bit flat, it is often because we are somehow tensing up or applying too much force or engagement here around the larynx using vocal fold engagement, so the musculature. And when we do that, it dampens down the resonances in our voices, and we don't sound like we're singing in tune, even if we are singing in tune. This is part also of that mask resonance. Mask resonance, or the singer's formant, if you will make us sound more in tune and also help us project. And the lack thereof will often leave us sounding as if we are, in fact, flat. So that's something that should always be on our mind, and it's a really, really good reason to try to keep our stage volumes reasonable. If it gets too loud, the tendency is to push. Then we will first dampen those vibrations by tensing up, and we will sound flat. But ultimately, if we clamp down too much, we will start to go flat, and then everything starts to go south from there. The other question was, how do you typically know when you are ready to sing, in quotes, after a warm-up, and how many repetitions of your warm-ups would you recommend? E.g., focus on one video at a few times, or how do we know if to move on to another warm-up? So, how do we know when we're ready to sing after a warm-up? If we're just practicing, I don't spend a whole lot of time warming up. I mean, I will warm up the range of the song that I'm intending to work on, but I'll do much more of my warm-up while I'm practicing. If I'm getting ready to go on stage, I take a little bit more time because I want to warm up not just my physical body, but also my mind into the mindset of what it's going to be like to walk on stage. And so I might spend a lot of time just singing kind of random, usually it's random Beatles songs that I'll be singing and playing, and just trying to calm myself and get focused to step out and perform. Now, in terms of the warm-up videos and things like that on YouTube, yes, they're warm-ups, and yes, they're great for that, so you can use them to get ready to sing your repertoire, but they are also technical exercises. And so the key here is to listen very carefully to what isn't working in those warm-ups, what vowels aren't in alignment, what's not as smooth as some other thing. Identify that, and then seek out the other videos that are there on the channel that specifically address those skill sets. For example, let's say you're doing just a general old full range warm-up, and you notice that your ah vowel isn't really sounding like everything else. If you search the channel, you will find that there are how to focus your ah vowel videos. Go and practice those, and then come back and do your warm-up again. The guidebook that I'm writing, and I'm trying, I really don't mean to be so self-promoting, but the guidebook that I'm writing, in theory, will help you do this so that you can identify that more easily. It's all going to be cross-referenced via keywords, as well as the videos themselves, which have brief descriptions, and then within the descriptions there are references and internal links to go to other videos, and then from there you can click the link to take you to YouTube. FYI, almost all the links take you right to the singing, so you won't have to sit through all of my "Hi, my name is Jeff" kind of intros for all that stuff. You'll skip right over that and dive right in. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of a convoluted answer, but it's different for different situations. If you're going to practice, it's just a practice session, maybe keep your warm-up shorter, dive into your repertoire. If you're getting ready to go on stage, I want to plan a little bit more time. I like to have a little bit more time before I'm going to walk out and perform. I'm going to check in on screen here and just see what's going on. So, John Farnham voice was in falsetto, head voice, and a little bit of mid-rasp voice. Pretty much, yeah. He's employing all that sort of stuff, which is really, I mean, a masterful usage of the voice. Aldo, this week I was experimenting with my dynamics. I tried to keep everything in the same volume, and I found out that my highest notes were breathy. Was it because I didn't give enough energy? Okay. We don't, in a neutral sounding vocal delivery, we have to make a bit of a crescendo as we ascend, but the crescendo is a result of increased airflow. So if I'm going to start in order to stay released here as I ascend, I've got to increase the airflow. If I don't increase the airflow, then one of two things will happen. I'm either going to squeeze to try to get the pitches, or in your case, you went on a little bit on the breathy side, so you start to partially adduct the vocal fold, employing a bit of the ligament, more of a falsetto delivery of the sound. Now that's cool if you want it. And that will maintain a more consistent volume, but you're changing the vocal delivery. If you want to have a consistent sound, the airflow's got to increase as you ascend, and that means to stay released here, in order to keep the same vocal delivery, you're going to make a bit of a crescendo. That is almost certainly the reason why that happened. In terms of thinking about it in terms of energy, yeah, I mean, if you're talking about abdominal energy and engagement, yes, but it ultimately is breath energy. You've got to increase the airflow as you make that ascent. Amos Craig, good question. I'm not sure who you're referring to, Amos, but I think there's been awesome questions thus far, so I am on board with that comment. Thank you. JC's Radiant Ray, good afternoon to you and welcome. It is always nice to see you pop up. Thanks for joining us. My evening, your afternoon. Capone, here it is evening in Finland. Yes. I guess you're an hour ahead of me, in fact, where I am in England. Aldo, I listened to some Bach chorales and I got completely lost. Huge difference from solo singing. Anyway, I did your solfege practice video and I enjoyed it. Great. Also, I listened to Jeff Buckley. Yeah, man. Okay, so stick with the Bach chorales. I know from firsthand experience that they are tricky. They are very, very tricky. But just stick with it. Just do what you can do. Just 5-10 minutes a day, or 5 or 10 minutes 5 days a week. Stick with it. Watch what happens to your aural acuity. How you hear and perceive music will change fundamentally. And yeah, Jeff Buckley is amazing. An artist that we lost far too soon. Alar Sophia says hello to you all, and hello to you. Michael, yesterday when I practiced your larynx, straining in tongue warm-ups as usual, I understood that my larynx goes up, tongue is rising on higher notes than those in video. In covered range, it stays stable. Is it okay to practice it 1 octave higher? Is it going to work the same way? If your larynx remains in a neutral position, then an octave higher, you will be entering a different register of your voice, which is fine, as long as you're aware of that and you're using appropriate airflow. What you might consider doing is going up in steps. So rather than going a full octave above the exercises that you're using, do the alto range one instead of the tenor. That will be a rather moderate change in tessitura, but it should stay. If it does go above your next transition zone, it will only just do so. And so what you can do with that video is really work right up to the third passaggio without going over it. And then the mezzos go quite a bit higher than that. So the mezzos are going right up to E flat 5. And that's quite a bit of range. Not impossible. Not impossible at all. However, you really, really want to make sure that you have adequate airflow for that range from B flat 4 through E flat 5. That's the point when the male voice typically starts using the ligament as a primary phonation source. So what we would think of as falsetto. It doesn't sound like falsetto if you do it with enough airflow and release of the vocal fold. It will sound full. So that's my only concerns there with the octave. Try bumping up incrementally. That might work just as well or even better. Gerald Ryan, hello, and hello to you. My hat is off to you once again. 1 a.m., I believe, or midnight or 1 a.m. in the Philippines where you are. Thank you for joining us. Sebtor, thanks a lot for your warm-up exercises. They're useful and make you explore different areas of your voice. Yes, that is the idea. That is the idea. The tools are there to work on your voice in a variety of different ways and hopefully, develop a skill set that'll let you tackle whatever it is that you wish to sing. Oh, Gerald Ryan says he wasn't feeling well last week. I assume that you're feeling better this week, and welcome back. Capone. I'm not sure what you mean by that. My slime don't bother in low and middle registers, but high register, the voice crackles. So I use now some honey and ginger, some other herbs in the product also. Pastilles before singing. Yeah. I'm not sure what the first bit about that means. My slime don't bother in low. It sounds like a sort of early 80s like kind of rap song, like it would be, I don't know, like something like the Fat Boys would sing. But maybe give a bit of clarification on that. Oh, wait a minute. Were you talking about slime on your vocal fold a couple weeks ago or last week? Is that what that's referring to? That's probably what that is. I think I remember now. Yeah, okay. So if you've got, right, the phlegm, little static on the radio as I humorously refer to that. So high register, the voice crackles a little bit. I wouldn't worry about that too much. As long as it's not disturbing your phonation, then you should be all right. It shouldn't hurt you, so long as it is in fact just phlegm that's loosening on the vocal fold. If it's if it's an excess of vocal fold engagement, like vocal fry, for example, from lack of airflow, that could be troublesome. So you want to make sure that it is just phlegm. Amos Craig, does strengthening the voice have more to do with proper muscle memory, that is good technique, or is there actually a strengthening of the vocal folds or muscles that help you sing better? Fantastic question. Really, really good. Pardon me. Let me have a little sip of water here. There is a certain amount of strengthening of the cricothyroid muscles that helps with the transition through the secondo passaggio. So when you haven't used your upper register, what I call cricothyroid dominant singing, what is often referred to as head voice, there can be a real disparity between how that phonates versus the thyroarytenoid dominant range of your voice, what is commonly referred to as chest voice. So there's a certain amount of muscle strengthening in those posterior and anterior cricothyroid muscles that will help with phonation. So there is a little bit of strengthening. But I think that more of it in general is the training of good technique and good habits into airflow engagement and posture. So the cricothyroids developing a little bit more strength so that they match and can match resonances better with the thyroarytenoid is part of it. But it's also, in part, having the consistency of engagement through the abdominal area, consistency of expansion through the rib cage, and having those muscles be in that dynamic and responsive system with the diaphragm. And I think those practices altogether make for having the strengthening of the voice. But that is a very astute question, and that's just a very astute question. What are vocal zone pastilles? If anyone has tested those, I don't. If anybody has tested the vocal zone pastilles, please chime in and address it towards Capone. You could use like an @Capone. I don't use any of that stuff, really. I've seen those. I used to use the slippery elm pastilles or tea, which is like the throat coat thing, and the slippery elm is what's put in there to coat the throat. But I just have stopped using it. I haven't used any of that stuff in such a long time. I'm either healthy enough to sing, in which case then I'm staying well hydrated with room temperature water, or I'm not healthy enough to sing, and I will, and generally not perform under those circumstances or teach, and I will avoid trying to vocalize over the secondo passaggio. Sometimes I can't help but teach a few people in those times, but I will limit my range accordingly. Aldo, can you talk a bit about harmonies? Do harmonies work like chords and intervals? I am studying Bohemian Rhapsody, by the way. Mr. Mercury was and is the best frontman ever. He was amazing, was he not? I just read an article because it was his. It would have been his 70th birthday, either today or yesterday, and there's some beautiful photos and anecdotes from people. It sounds. I never met him, but it sounds as if he was really, really a lovely man. Another one we lost too soon. Yes, you are right. Harmonies. We might say that harmonies are part of the contrapuntal practice of vocals. So counterpoint or contrapuntal motion is when things work both vertically, like a chord, because it's all stacked up. So that's a vertical stacking of pitches, and it makes a chord. And then melodically. And when you have those two things working together, then you get harmonies. So you can inform your harmonies by knowing the chords of your song, knowing the scales, and then knowing the interval that you wish to be above or below your melodic note. Now, it's going to change, right? So when I started this, that's a major third, that's a minor third, that's a minor third as well. But if I played it all major, it would not adhere to the key of D major. So we have to know our key. We have to know the general area that we wish to be in. And then a little bit of counterpoint doesn't hurt, right? But that's really what harmonies are. They're just melodies at a different, at a relationship to the main melody. Lovely. I think it just catapults the musicality of our work when we can get a harmony vocalist in there. I love singing harmonies too. It's like I very much favorite. Aldo asks, last week I mentioned that I am also a sound engineer. What is your DAW of choice? And you work in Ableton. Yes, I did an internship at a recording studio in San Francisco, California, and then stayed at the studio for many, many years as a recording engineer. I've had my own studios and still operate a very small. I don't really do a ton of client work. Every once in a while I do, but I mostly I used to do a lot more engineering. I've always worked in Pro Tools. Well, if I go way back before digital audio, I was using Mastertracks Pro as a sequencer, and then shortly thereafter, I started using Pro Tools. I began using Pro Tools when it was version 4.3. That was before surround sound even was available in Pro Tools. And then I worked in Pro Tools all the way up through Pro Tools 12. So that's very, very recent. And I finally switched to Reaper after nearly 20 years working in Pro Tools. I made the switch over to Reaper for a variety of reasons, mostly because of the expense of Pro Tools. It was just ridiculously expensive and harder to avoid doing updates when they wanted you to do these very, very expensive updates. And then it turned into this basically becoming a subscription service where you would pay like a monthly or yearly fee to use the DAW. And I like to use the workstations I record the videos on YouTube in Reaper now. I've been doing them in Pro Tools up until recently. I use it for that. I use it for the odd client gig, but mostly I want to record myself, and I didn't want to be tied to the update schedules that Pro Tools was going to dictate to me. Reaper doesn't do that, and Reaper is such an incredibly more efficient program. I loved working in Pro Tools, and I know it like the back of my hand, but switching over to Reaper has been a fairly painless process, and I kind of wish I would have changed sooner. It's awesome. I absolutely love it. Gerald Ryan, yes, it is 1:20 in the morning. You are a trooper, man. You are a trooper. El Salo, thanks. I have a question. I'm 16. My tessitura starts at E flat 3, and my vocal range is G2, D5, C sharp 6. Can I say I'm a tenor with my age now? Don't know. It depends on a lot, on so many different things. It depends on the quality of your voice. It depends on where the secondo passaggio is. It depends on how you navigate that, and so many other things. And D5 to C sharp 6 is very, very, very high. Yeah, it's just very, very difficult to say. I mean, see, the thing is when you say E flat 3 and then you talk about D5 and C sharp 6, that starts to sound like kind of tenor stuff, but you throw the G2 in there, and again, I have no idea the quality of your voice, so I'm kind of just speculating. But that sort of confuses things a little bit, because the E flat 3 with the other stuff starts to sound very tenor-like, but that G2 is very, very curious. Michael, how to practice after warm-ups? Just sing along with songs as good as I can, or figure it out piece by piece, like trying to play something on an instrument and then sing a full song? It's going to change from song to song, I should think. Some songs will have rather challenging parts, and it pays to pull them apart and put it all back together. If you find that you're singing through the whole song and you're comfortable with it, try recording yourself and see what you think. What does it sound like? And evaluate it as objectively as you can. Identify the parts that are challenging, go back and work those through. Take out the vowel sound, or take the consonants out, and just do the vowels. Get your lines working and stuff like that. With my clients, I recommend having songs that are very, very easy to sing, where you don't have to worry so much about the technical aspects of it. You're just going to really focus on the musical aspects of it. And if you're playing an instrument and singing, the integration of those skill sets, and then having some songs or even just parts of songs where you're really, using them as project pieces, where you're going to work on a section and you might not ever perform, you might not ever have the whole tune done, but you're just working on that one section because it addresses a particular skill, and that could be like a series of vowels or a range of your voice that you want to work on. And then, kind of work the two so that you have things that are just enjoyable and musical, and let you work on that, which is a skill too, and then other things that challenge you more technically. Memmeechi. My middle register is completely useless. I always sound hoarse. I think I have vocal paralysis. What are ways I can relieve the stress in my vocal cords and get my middle voice stronger? That is heavy. I half the time I forget this. I'm trying to be better about this. For those of you just joining us, my name is Jeff, and welcome. This is your live event, so drop your questions in the chat, and I will do my best to answer them, and feel free to talk amongst yourselves as well. If you haven't yet subscribed, please consider doing so at your earliest convenience. Okay. Now, by middle register, I have to assume, I don't have to, but I am assuming that you mean your cricothyroid dominant singing voice, the area between thyroarytenoid dominant voice, which is chest voice, and falsetto, which is much, much higher up, in that middle range where you're balancing the cricothyroid muscles. If I'm wrong about that, please say so here so I can address your question. If you think you have vocal paralysis, you may want to see an ENT or an otolaryngologist. And yet, if it's only the middle voice, I don't know if that would be the case, because if you really had vocal paralysis, it'd be throughout your ranges, presumably. There is something, we sometimes refer to it, and this is not a technical term, as throat lock. When you are not, you're belting, but you're not applying enough airflow with the thyroarytenoid dominant voice to really get full pitches. But you're also not allowing your voice to transition into the cricothyroid dominant voice, into the upper register. And it can be very hoarse sounding and kind of thin and rattly. If that is in fact the case, and if I am addressing the correct range of your voice, how to sing in head voice would be one of the videos you could check out. And if you are male, you could do the how to sing high notes part 1. Start with that and then move on from there. Even if you're not male, you could still watch that video to understand the technique, because that video addresses the technical concepts of the register shift more thoroughly than the how to sing in head voice videos. But those videos are done in all ranges. So you'd watch how to sing high notes part 1 to understand the theory, and then go over to your appropriate range for how to sing in head voice and do the practice there. Ben, it is your live event, so I'm sorry that you're just now joining us, but I'm glad that you're here. It's not that you're tardy; you just got in a little bit later. There's no tardiness here. I don't issue hall passes, and I don't keep track. But welcome. Thank you for joining us. I scrolled too far. I'm sorry. I'm looking now. Kenoni Ellis, how do you belt for tenors, and how do you have more control over your voice? Those are very broad questions. Belting is the process. Okay, so there are these terms get used, and different voice teachers will use them in a variety of different ways. So Belting, as far as I am concerned, is preventing the voice from making a transition from the thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice to the cricothyroid dominant singing voice. Some people say that when you make that transition, you're still belting. My understanding of what I have studied is that is not quite right. That when you are preventing the thyroarytenoid muscles from allowing the voice to transition, then you are effectively belting. So you belt by doing that, by preventing that transition. Having more control of your voice, however, is very, very broad. In the context of what's available on the channel, or if, like, for example, if you went to jeffrolka.com, my website, you sign up on the email list, and you get the AAA method, and that's my method, which is, it's not like AAA, like, oh, I'm so awesome. It's airflow, alignment, and articulation. And when we account for those three aspects of our vocal production and bring them into a neutral delivery, I believe that's how we get control of our voices, by having consistent and proper alignment, both of vowels and our bodies, of having appropriate airflow, which is dynamic, meaning that it's appropriate to the range that we are singing in. And then at the point of tonal onset is where all of these things come together. And so airflow and alignment are the first two sections, and articulation is the third. And by practicing all of those concepts, literally practicing with the voice, not thinking about it or something like that, that's how we gain control of our voices. And ear training doesn't hurt, and there's dozens of other things. I don't know your specific challenges, so if I knew that, then I might be able to direct you more specifically. But controlling our voices, let me put it this way. By practicing to have a neutral vocal delivery, we enable the voice to more easily adapt to the changing conditions within which we are singing. So if we're singing a high note and we have practiced increasing our engagement and hence increasing airflow, the vocal fold will adapt far more quickly than if we tried to force it to sing that pitch. So controlling our voices is more about controlling what we can control, our alignment, our engagement. We can't necessarily control the environment that we're in, but those are the things that we can control. Trying to will ourselves to sing in tune isn't necessarily going to make us sing in tune. But practicing solfege can increase our overall acuity so that we know better how we're hearing things. It can also increase how we predict what's going to come. By practicing engagement and increasing airflow, then that will respond to that change in register if the skip goes there. All of those things, those are the things that we practice in order to have control. El Salo. I practice opening vertically in the mouth. Yes. That I think is very important because of the release of TMJ joint tension. That's another thing that we can practice. We can practice releasing these muscles by moving them. That is the principal focal point when I'm having clients practice opening and closing as they're ascending and descending. It's more to generate release of those muscles than it is to have an open aperture. That is largely in question these days. We don't necessarily need to have a wide open mouth to sing effectively. That is kind of a hot topic right now. Thank you, El Salo. I appreciate that. Capone. I have Sonar Artist. It is budget version, but enough for my home studio. Exactly. I think that the DAWs that are available today are awesome. I mean, Reaper is so inexpensive and so comprehensive. It's amazing. People love Sonar. Cubase is, like, every year, Cubase is the highest rated DAW available. There's just so much out there. The thing is to find one that you like that works well with your workflow, like the kind in the kind of music that you produce is important too. Pro Tools is awesome if you are recording live instruments, but it doesn't have a step sequencer, and the MIDI implementation is okay. It's gotten much, much better over the years, certainly than it used to be. But and even after they acquired Digital Performer, when they acquired Digital Performer, their MIDI implementation got a lot better. But compared to like Cubase, and I'm trying to think of the other, or Ableton, especially Ableton, it doesn't even come close. Maz is responding to Capone about menthol pastilles and likes them quite a lot. That's cool. Michael, do you listen to medieval music? Not a lot. Not really. Mostly the Baroque era and more recent. If you go way back to medieval, you start to get a lot of organum, and I kind of like it, but I'm not going to write anything like that. And if I did need to write something like that, I know what it is. So, yeah, I don't really listen to it, but it is beautiful. Maz, I've recently started an intensive exercise regime, which I enjoy. Excellent. I can get on board with that. I love exercising. However, I found that I'm now struggling to complete my 45-minute daily singing practice due to the taxing nature of Appoggio. Help. Stick with it. Maybe maybe break it up so that it's not 45 minutes all at one go. Maybe do 20 and 25 minutes and give yourself a little break in between. There's nothing wrong with doing that. If possible, maybe orient the Appoggio practice into a different, like either put it before your workout or maybe put it like hours and hours afterwards, depending on when your workout regime is. Some thoughts. I know if you're talking about some of the stuff that's out there, like the HIIT workouts, the high intensity interval training stuff, man, that it will just, I mean, I was doing a couple of those back when I was in California before we came over to England, and it would just waste me. This one instructor in particular was just crushing. My scrolling skills are leaving much to be desired this evening. Joey Chester asks how I'm doing today. I'm doing quite well. Thank you very much. Feeling much, much better. Yeah, actually. It's really, really like miserable here in England today. Like it is just rainy and gray and gross, but it's okay. I myself feel fine. Thank you for asking. El Salo, C6 is soprano range. Are you a woman? That is true. I'm sorry. Capone asked that question. And yes, you are correct, Capone. That is a good question. El Salo, nope. Spanish. Does not speak. You're doing fine by me, El Salo. Your English is doing just fine. Haim Ingram. How do I know what my vocal range is if I can reach into all the vocal ranges? Awesome question. Thank you for asking. At some point, I need to do a video on discerning range. But the thing is it's very tricky. There is some overlap throughout all the ranges, from baritone to soprano. Now, admittedly, the overlap between a baritone and a soprano is not much, but it's there. And depending on your baritone's technique, it could be a bit more than just a few notes. So we can all, we all kind of overlap onto one another to a certain degree, some more than others. Knowing your range is about knowing where the secondo passaggio is, where your zona di passaggio begins, or the primo passaggio, and the overall characteristics of your voice. Just because you have a lot of low notes does not necessarily mean you're a baritone. It suggests it, but it's not an ironclad rule. just because you have a lot of high notes doesn't make you a tenor either. It's really about where the secondo passaggio is. And to a large extent, these designations only matter if you're wanting to pursue a career in opera. But even then, I know opera singers that regularly perform as tenors, but are really baritones based upon their fasce, their vocal range. So, knowing the secondo passaggio, knowing the overall characteristics of your voice, and then being very familiar with the zona de passaggio and the primo passaggio, that will indicate what your fasce or vocal range designation, if you will, is. Ben, can you describe briefly what a vocal coaching lesson or lessons with me is like on Skype? Sure. My lessons are all oriented to do and satisfy the goals and your goals. So usually before we meet, there is some talk via email or things like that, mostly email, about what we're going to be working on, what your interests are, and I get a game plan together and basically just dive right in. If you're using a PC, I have a Dropbox folder that's filled with all kinds of scale patterns that I use in the lessons. So I do ask you to familiarize yourself with getting into Dropbox and playing the tracks so that we have a nice seamless experience. If you're using a Mac, I send GarageBand files so that you can play them on your end and we can change keys and tempos and things like that in order to have the exercise just where we need it to be for your vocal skills. And we dive in. I spend as little time talking as I possibly can in the lessons. Certainly I answer, if you've got a question, I answer it. But it's about getting your voice in shape. And so the lessons are different for everybody. Some people only want to work on technique. And I do that with the understanding that at some point, you've really got to start looking at songs, because if you never practice integrating the technique into the songs, the songs will certainly improve, but they'll lag behind. It'll take longer than it needs to. But most lessons are about a third technique and 2/3 musical study, and that's it. We just go for it. I record everything that I do, and I send it to you as an MP3 afterwards via a service called Hightail. And that's really it. So yeah, it's meant to serve your goals. You tell me what your goals are, and we get a plan together to help you achieve them. Joey, I find tenors almost always sound good whether they have training or not. Was there a time where you sang terribly? I suppose you mean me. And I can assure you that yes, indeed, there was a time that I did not sound good. That was, in fact, there was a lot of, I had plenty of indication that I was not sounding good when I was just getting started. And that was a large reason how I came about becoming a singing instructor, was that I just wanted to, maybe terrible is perhaps, maybe I'm just being a little bit self-conscious about it. But what was terrible was that I knew I could do more than what I was doing, and I was not figuring out how to achieve that. And that then again was a huge reason why I started to do so much independent study, to then discover Appoggio and then begin to implement it and then notice the changes. If there's anything that I want people to take away from the channel, is the importance of that as a skill set and how it is different from commonly taught practices for support for vocalists. It's not so simple, but it is so profoundly effective when implemented correctly. And I said, don't take my word for it. Read Richard Miller's books on, training soprano voices is inexpensive, and it's the text on Appoggio is the same as training tenor voices. Read the Shirley Emmons website. She quotes Richard Miller there quite a lot. That is it's such a profound impact. El Salo. I tried to say my chest voice gets power above E flat 3 and ends at D5. C6 is just head voice. I want to say I'm tenor now. But again, it's about the transition points. You could just as easily be a baritone with great transition skills. It's just impossible to say without knowing those transition points. Aldo, Maestro, do you listen to opera? Any recommendations? Is your mic a Sennheiser? It looks like Adele's mic. I don't know what mic Adele uses. This is a Neumann KMS 105, which I have seen her use from time to time. I've been a performer for such a long time and an engineer for such a long time, and I've got different mics for different applications. I really like this microphone. I really like the way my voice sounds with it. And when I'm playing acoustic shows, like an acoustic guitar and me singing or piano and singing, I like to use this mic because it has a hypercardioid pickup pattern. So it's got tons of rejection, and yet it does sound, I think, quite lovely. I have used Sennheisers. I've used the E935s, and I really, really, really like those as a stage mic, especially like in a band context, because it's not as hot as this mic. It doesn't have such a hot pickup pattern, but it's a little bit wider polar pattern, but it does really, really well in high volume environments and is not terribly expensive. I mean, and so much better than an SM58. I have an Audex OM6 as well. I haven't used that in a long time. I used to use that in high sound pressure environments as well too. Wow, I've been going too slow tonight. I'm really sorry, folks. There's a lot of questions here. I'm gonna pick up the pace a little bit. Leading voice. I wonder if I'm missing something. No, you're right. Capone. Hum very softly and quiet helps to recover the voice. Indeed. Sometimes it hurts when I'm singing tenor. It's pain at times. But kind of hard to get to mezzo without falsing. Yeah, if it's hurting you, I would recommend you stop and reevaluate your technique in that area. It shouldn't hurt. You're talking to Capone. ENTs do nothing. Sunit Sinj, how does one with a throaty and low voice work toward bridging? It seems to require a lot of breath support to make the transition. We need the engagement. I refer to it as engagement. When talking about breath support, we need a lot of that. We need additional airflow through the zona de passaggio in order for the vocal folds to stay released. If you're not successfully making a transition from thyroarytenoid dominant singing, which is your chest voice, to cricothyroid dominant singing, your first step is to start from the top down. If you've had people have you do sirens like that, ooh, make sure it starts in that open ooh kind of a sound. That's your cricothyroid dominant voice. The transition into your thyroarytenoid is going to be clunky at first. It's going to be kind of harsh. It's okay. That's what practice is for. Get the airflow happening first. A lot of lip trill for a while, and then start to do wide intervals. This is all in the How to Sing High Notes video, or the How to Sing in Head Voice videos as well too. Christopher Vaca, I'm a baritone. I'm having a hard time singing harmony in the lower register. Lower harmonies, I find those challenging as well too. Tips. Avoid improvising the harmonies if you can. So practice them in advance. You might also it's gonna boil down to practice largely. So if you can practice it as much as possible. Maybe record yourself and then practice yourself singing a lower harmony. That is going to be, that's the short answer to that. Certainly solfege would help over a longer period of time. So maybe if you can get like a 5 to 10 minute a day solfege practice in. That's just going to enhance your overall oral skills and make it more reliable and make it easier in general. So a little bit of solfege, a lot of practice. Katie Stitz is loving the streaming, and thank you. I appreciate that. Welcome. Thank you for sharing. Michael, thank you for your answers, Jeff. Thank you very much. I try to be cool. I try to be patient. I think mostly I succeed. Every once in a while I don't, but I do my best. Appreciate it. Ben is practicing for 4 hours. That's a long time, Ben. That is a really long time. Joey Chester, what are your go-to exercises when you don't have much time to practice? Depends on what I'm doing. If I'm warming up to go on stage, then I'm probably going to do a bit of the which is just like a blunt force object to get my body going. And then I'm going to immediately head into exercises that are, all 5 vowels. And I'm going to take those right straight through the secondo passaggio and right back down. I don't really need a lot of time to warm up any longer if I am maintaining a good vocal practice from day to day. So, 5 or 10 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes every day when I don't have more time to warm up or practice makes the days that I really don't have a lot of time before I have to sing or do something, makes it possible for me to then warm up really, really fast. I do hope that helps. You're welcome, Maz. Thank you. Ben, however, I rest my voice for 2 to 3 days before I begin practice again. This practice makes my chords feel more engaged. That, if it works for you, Ben, that's cool, but usually a daily practice is much more efficient over the long haul. I've never recommended that someone have a 4-hour practice session and then 3 days off. I would always recommend a more moderate practice session on a daily basis, or 5 days a week if possible, or whatever it's going to be. But if that is what is sustainable for you and it's working, then that's cool. We are all different and we all have different constraints. So the most important thing is that it be sustainable and that it work well for you. Gerald Ryan, thank you for all of this. You're a great teacher. Thank you for the videos. Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it. And good night. Good night where you are. It's late. Thank you for coming. Jaheim, would you consider singing a talent or skill? I like it. Awesome question. I think there's room for both of those. I think that there is a talent in knowing oneself and awareness. Perhaps the talent comes in being aware. That awareness then drives our ability to cultivate the skill that is singing. Certainly, there is a lot of, we can have different amounts of that awareness, which arbitrarily gets called talent, and that helps in the development of the skill. But I'm a big believer that with practice, with proper practice, with wise practice and wise guidance, we can all be great at what we do, great singers and great musicians and great performers. That doesn't mean you're going to be Freddie Mercury. That doesn't mean you're going to be Jeff Buckley. It doesn't mean you're going to be Katie Lang. Part of that awareness is knowing oneself and knowing your strengths, knowing your challenges, accepting those things, working on the challenges to make them come into, more agreement with the strengths. But knowing thyself and being the artist that is part of those things. I'm not saying we should never challenge ourselves. I think we should always be challenging ourselves. But I'm never going to be Barry White. I'm never going to have that voice. And I could try to be Barry White for the rest of my life and never do what he does. I just won't. I'll never be that guy. But then again, I'll never be Jeff Buckley. I'll never be Paul McCartney. I'll never be Sting. I'll never be any of these people, even though they have similar vocal ranges to me. I'm going to be me. And knowing myself is the best way to harness my skills and my talents. That's what I think. JC's Radiant Ray, I think, is talking to El Salo, who gives a smile, which is really cool. I love Cupquake. That is an awesome ID. That is such an awesome ID. The idea of a cupquake. Like, I'm just thinking, I'm imagining like a giant, like pink frosted with like glitter on top cupcake, but it's like shaking and cracking because it's a cupquake. But then again, I might be kind of going off here. I'm a male and have very low confidence in my post-puberty voice, so I choose to sing with my voice before puberty. Is that okay? As long as it doesn't hurt, as long as you're healthy and your voice is doing all right, what you're probably doing is strengthening your cricothyroid dominant singing voice. And when you do start to feel more confident with your thyroarytenoid range again, you'll integrate them more seamlessly, as long as it's not hurting. How bad can that be? You are very welcome, Ben. It is a pleasure. Jaheim, does puberty affect the voice that much? Going through it right now, I haven't found it doing much to my voice. It's different for all of us. My voice didn't change a ton. But again, it's going to be different for everybody else. El Salo, you're very welcome, and I assure you I will be doing more videos. I took this week off. I did not want to, but I've been really making a push to get the guidebook done, and it's in a format that I can now begin to evaluate it more effectively. So I'm going to get back on the video train here again. Whistle tones, of which you aspire to have. I love Cupquakes wants to have control of whistle tones, like Minnie Riperton and Mariah Carey. That is very, very cool. Yes, by all means do. And Joey is saying thank you. And thank you, Joey. I appreciate that. 21 Pilots. I'm thinking of Blind Pilot, which I do listen to and I think is very cool. I have not heard of 21 Pilots. I will check it out. I make a note of it. Would you suggest, I love Cupquake writes, would you suggest any particular exercise that could help me? Oh, well, going in the middle of, the one thing that's going to make everything easier once you're done with your transition is going to be airflow. So I would just really, really come to an understanding of Apagio, so that as your voice starts to stabilize, because this is going to go on for a little while, it's going to be a little bit funky for a little while, but the breathing work isn't going to change afterwards. So even though your vocal registration events and things like that may shift position and all that may change, the understanding, the body awareness and the engagement awareness that you come to understand with Apagio won't change. And that is what I would recommend you focus on. Aldo, be the fullest of yourselves. Shoot for the stars and be the stars. Yes, I love it. Love it. Maz, cheers to you too. You have a wonderful weekend as well. And Ben, the explanation about being and sounding like me is a light bulb moment. I need to sound like me. Absolutely. That is exactly. There's never going to be another you. There will never be another one of any of you or me or any of us. I think the greatest gift we can give is to be ourselves and put that out there for people to listen to. And with that, I leave you this Saturday evening. Thank you all for your questions. Thank you for your interactions. It is always a joy and a pleasure to meet with you in this capacity. And as always, take really good care of your voices. Enjoy singing, and I'll see you again next week. Bye.